The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back. We are jumping into the week 2 cash lineup review. Wanted to keep this video a little separate from my weekend review because I just want to specifically focus on cash games, overall strategy, how it went, and what we're going to use going forward. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so let's go over to Fantasy Lab. So wanted to go right where the cash line is to see what it took last week to cash. Now, last week, as you know, if you watched my Millie Maker breakdown, you would see that it was a low scoring week. So only 224 points took down the Millie Maker. A lot of the actual chalk failed this past week. And believe it or not, only 133 points is what it took to get to the cash line and in cash games, because this was the massive $25 double up. 103 points ended up cashing, get $50. This is certainly not a lineup I would play in cash. It's got some good pieces, but there's zero chance I would have Darnell Mooney. And really, you can't even see who they have at defense because Fantasy Labs is buggy sometimes. But Jared Goff, definitely a good cash game player at 6,200 for that game environment with, what we know he has with the Amon-Ra's and the Josh Reynolds, who he can throw to, and, Sam Laporta. And it's just a good game environment. Jahmyr Gibbs, certainly not what I would play. This is a very low floor player. This is not what you want to play in your cash games, right? You want a player that is getting steady volume. They're going to get a lot of carries. They're going to get 15 to 20 carries, maybe some passes out of the backfield, which obviously Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get some of that. But 12 points, and David Montgomery got hurt, and then the other guy came in and took carries for him. So this is obviously not a high floor player, the kind of player you want to avoid in cash games if you're trying to cash each and every week. Worked out this week for this person, but most week this won't cut it. And same with like Tyler Boyd. He's just not the type of player that sees enough volume from week to week that you want to target, which, I'll show you some of those players that you actually would like to target as far as, seeing 8+ targets every single week. The Puka Nacua, the Zay Flowers, the Nico Collins, these are guys that certainly are getting the amount of volume that you want. They're not going to have high variance week to week, like Tyler Boyd would have as a third option in that offense. So nonetheless, this was a low scoring week for cash games, and 103 points got it done. And one of the reasons I tell people to play head-to-heads is because even if you don't have your best week in cash, you can still make a profit. So that's what happened this last week. This is one of my more low-scoring weeks that I had in cash, and still was able to make a profit by just playing head-to-heads and going against people who did worse than I did. So, for example, this lineup here, 96 points. My cash lineup that I had was 120 points. Now, one thing, that I want to talk about a little bit is sometimes people tend to tilt a little bit, specifically at the beginning of the year. And just remember there's a lot of weeks. We're playing this game for 17, 18 weeks if you play cash games in week 18. So there's a lot that goes into your process, and we're not going to give up on something after 1 week. We're not going to entirely change everything. Trust your process. You do your lineup review, your study, you watch training videos, on how to play cash, knowing that we're not going to be reactionary because something bad happened. So, for example, Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley in that game environment. That was a good game environment. It was the highest total on the slate. It was projected to be 50 points, 51 points. And yet there was only 26 points scored in this game. So Vegas got it wrong too. It was way under. And that said, Trevor Lawrence still threw several balls in the end zone where the receiver couldn't get their feet down, and he ended up with 10 points as opposed to, a great day throwing for, 250 plus and 2 to 3 touchdowns at 62 or 6,700. That certainly would get there. So don't be reactionary. Know that your process was right. Variance happens. This is a game of variance. So that's something you have to keep in mind when it comes to cash games. Now, that said, I originally, early on in the week, and even on Saturday, I very much considered playing Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence, but I don't force stacks, and if they happen, they happen. But that said, when it came down to it on Sunday, I decided not to play Calvin Ridley because of that exact scenario. So if you have a game that doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, now I have 2 players in that game who have failed me. And this is the type of variance I do not want for my cash lineup. So I ended up not playing Calvin Ridley. And my wide receivers that I rolled with were Amon-Ra St. Brown, Zay Flowers, and Devontae Adams. So these, and Deebo Samuel, because Deebo Samuel, which we'll get to in a minute, he was popping in the optimals. He's only 5,600. So this matchup, he just projected really well going against the Rams, and he saved the day. 22 points. Amon-Ra 18. So right there, you're averaging 40. And then you get Zay Flowers, a $5,000 player. You get 10 points from him. More than enough. And then you get Devontae Adams, 20 points. So yeah, you got 20, 40, 60, 70 between those 3 guys. That's more than enough to bring it home. So kind of what I was talking about though, had I played Calvin Ridley, I wouldn't have won as many head-to-heads. I wouldn't have had any type of cash game profit on the day because Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence, they didn't have the kind of day you hope they would have. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward. That's why I normally, unless they're in a really good spot and I know the volume is going to be locked in, I will tend to fade stacks in cash games. So David Montgomery was in a good spot. And honestly, had he not gotten hurt, he would probably got more points in my cash lineup, so it looks better. Josh Kelly was a guy that it was a tough matchup, but the price was right and he had been effective. So he ended up being the highest projected and I believe the highest owned running back on the slate. So that was the reason why I played him. So that kind of goes to another piece of strategy I want to talk about. When it comes to cash games, oftentimes you just want to play the high owned players. And the reason being is if you get a guy, for example, who's 5,000 and he's high owned, let's say a fourth of the field is playing this running back in their lineups. It doesn't really hurt you that bad if that player doesn't meet expectations, right? Because a fourth of the field also played them. However, on the contrary, if you don't play them and they're cheap and he scores 20 points, Josh Kelly scores 20 points, now it's going to be very difficult for you to cash unless you found an equally priced player who also smashed. So it's kind of just like we don't need to outsmart the field in cash games. Save that showing everyone how smart you are for the large field GPPs. So even though I played Josh Kelly and he only got me 3 points, I was okay because he was only 5,000 and because he was chalk. So that's something to keep in mind. For the longest time, I would just piece together my cash lineup just by looking at the chalkboard and playing plays that I knew were projected well in decent spots and, were going to be highly owned. And obviously volume is key in cash games. So you want to chase volume. With that volume, for the most part, you're going to have high floor players So keep that in mind. And also chalk. So you want to eat as much chalk as you can in cash games. So overall, like I said, not the best lineup, but the wide receivers really brought it home. And then Luke Musgrave didn't get me a 0. So that was good. If you avoided the Troutman donut, you did pretty well. And then the Buccaneers D. This was a D that I was more than comfortable playing because they were coming up in optimals. We're going to get to that in a second. But also because they were going against Chicago, who looked horrible in week 1. And there's so many questions still about Justin Fields being a legit NFL quarterback. And for another week, those questions have not been answered. So Buccaneers in this spot, I thought was a really good play, 17 points. So this ended up being the difference. Next thing I want to do, let's go to DFS Army. And now if you're a DFS Army subscriber, obviously you have access to this. So this is our domination station. This is our optimizer. I've used several optimizers from competing sites. It's my favorite. I think it's the best in the industry. Use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. You get access to this as well. So, we kind of started looking at this the past couple of years and just how effective the optimizer is, just running the top optimal, some of the core plays you smash a door, you smash a love on them, you run the optimizer, and then you just trust the optimizer because it's going to lead you right more times than not. There's been so many times in the past when I've thought I could outsmart it and it ended up costing me money. So just something to keep in mind. Now, what we're going to do over here is you got to like the core plays. So you can't just run this. Like you literally can't, because it won't allow you, because DraftKings will call us and say, you can't do this. Like you guys have to be liking some players. So we will target guys that we think are core plays on the slate. So for example, Trevor Lawrence, based on his price and the way he projected, and he actually ended up being by Sunday, it was like 17% projected on. So he was one of the more higher projected on quarterbacks. So he's a guy that you would put a like on or an adore. Same with Amon-Ra, same with Calvin Ridley in this matchup, in 2-game environments where you're looking to target. And then personally, I don't play double tight end in cash games, so I would zero that out. I'd hit run optimized for 150. And I'm going to look at the top several lineups and go from there. Now, the top lineup, if you're a DFS Army VIP, I did my cash game breakdown this past week, and it was like the 5th lineup that it spit out. It was a Josh Allen and Diggs lineup. It had Amon-Ra in it. It had David Montgomery. I believe it had like Puka Nacua or Nico Collins, had one of those two guys. And I said, this is a lineup I would play in cash. And that lineup absolutely smashed. I didn't actually end up playing it in cash, but if I had stuck to, what I originally said, I would have made a lot more profit in cash this past week than I did. So something to keep in mind. It will lead you in the right way more times than not. So. Oh boy. I don't want to get yelled at in the comments. You don't even realize this Discord is on, I swear it, until it just starts going like crazy. and it always happens when you're on a live stream. All right, so this is going a little slow. Let's see. Now, this is a backtest function that we can use the DFS Army. So, by the way, if you like this kind of content, definitely hit the like button, comment. Let us know who you liked in cash this past week. Maybe who you like this next week. Subscribe, share, hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. But we have this backtest function, and this is one of the things we do so we can really refine our process. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to 50 for just the purpose of this stream, because I don't want to wait all day. But by being able to backtest slates, you can really see the perfect settings for you to get the optimizer to do what you want it to do. We use this for cash games. Of course, we've used this for Millie Maker reviews. In fact, prior to 2022, we started these backtest streams. Geek started these backtest streams and just really refining the optimizer. And then week 1 of 2022, a DFS Army VIP took down the Millie Maker. So it's one of the most important things you can do, studying past slates, see what's working, and fine tuning your optimizer. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. So the top lineup that spit out just based on the adores. Now I got Amon-Ra, obviously. So, that was a player I was targeting, but it didn't even give me Josh Allen. And this is what happened on the prior stream before last week. It didn't give me Trevor Lawrence. It gave me Josh Allen. But yeah, it also gave me Rachaad White, who was in a great spot going against Chicago's poor run D. Josh Kelly. Again, a guy like this doesn't hurt your lineup. 16% of the field played him. He was only 5,000. He was cheap. It was everything else that you were able to hit that really helped. So Devontae Adams, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Deebo Samuel, Cowboys D, smash. So 148 points, way more than enough to crush cash. You probably would have won 99% of your lineups, your matchups this past week. So Trevor Lawrence, I think, what did we determine the cash lineup was? Yeah. So I obviously hit 120, as I was saying. But yeah, I think it was 103 in the double up, the massive double up. And then, yeah, another Josh Allen lineup. So 133 plus, more than enough. So if you're a DFS Army VIP, you have access to this, obviously. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Obviously, best of luck this next coming week. For those DFS Army VIPs who watch, I drop my cash game strategy breakdown on Saturday morning. So keep an eye out for that. And good luck. We got the Thursday showdown coming up. Obviously, for those VIPs, VIP only, we do the showdown breakdown. So now's the time to join FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. I've been crushing showdowns this year. So there's no time like now to get in before that Thursday showdown comes. So best of luck. We'll see you all next week.